Shalom Aleichem, Erev Tov, good evening. We're continuing in the 7th chapter of the laws of war of Rabbenu HaRambam. So if you want to look in the book of Shofatim, so if you're on Sefaria, click Sefaria. You can click Halacha, Mishneh Torah. From there you want to scroll all the way down to the book of Shoftim. Select the laws of kings and wars, chapter 7. Last week, we studied together the meaning of the word Mashuach, the anointed one, who is anointed with which kind of oil?
Olive oil.
Very good. Shemen HaMishcha. It's a special oil that we use to anoint kings from the house of David. Who else is anointed with this?
Kohen Gadol.
Kohen Gadol. Very good. And who else?
I forgot. What's it called?
The Kohen who goes
Oh, yeah.
to war. The name of the Kohen who goes to war is? Let's look together. Echad milchemet mitzvah. Halakha number 1. Vechad milchemet hareshut. Whether it's a war of a mitzvah, meaning the war of the 7 nations when conquering the land of Israel, the war of Amalek, and the war of anybody who fights the Jewish people, meaning a defensive war. All of those wars are considered milchemet mitzvah. Milchemet hareshut is a war in which the people, the king, has to ask permission from the Sanhedrin before he goes to war. And that could be to increase the borders, to conquer land, whatever else that might be. Memanin kohen ledaber el ha'am. We appoint a kohen to speak to the nation. Bishat ha-milchama, in the time of war, moshchin oto b'shemen ha-mishcha. And we anoint him with a special anointing oil. We mentioned last time, right at the end of the shiur, that you don't put too much oil. You only need a little bit of oil. Some chachamim give the reason you don't want to get his clothes dirty. But at least, the very least is we put a little bit of oil. V'zehu hanikra meshuach milchama. And this is the one who's called the Kohen, who is the meshuach milchama. He is anointed for war. Now this Kohen speaks to the Jewish people. Should we read the Pesukim again? You remember them from last time? Come inside. There's room. So, the Kohen, let's read together. שני פעמים מדבר משוח מלחמה על העם. Michael, can I bother you to give us some chumashim, please? And give me one also. Thank you. One more, Devarim, chapter 20. Chapter 20, Pasuk 1. We read this last time, but I'll review it a little bit together. When you go to war against your enemies, 10:38 in the blue book, 10:38. When you go to war against your enemies, and you see horses, chariots, an army that is greater than you. Have no fear from them, because Adonai, your God, is with you. The one who took you out of Egypt. And it happens when you are when you approach war. And the Kohen should approach the nation and speak to them. And he will say to them, Shema Yisrael, listen Israel. You are coming close now. You're about to enter war against your enemies. Do not soften your hearts. Al tiru ve'al tachpezu ve'al ta'arzu mipenehem. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be scared of them. Ki Adonai Elohechem haholech imachem, because Adonai your God is going with you. Lehilachem lachem im oivechem lo'shiatchem. He is going with you to fight against your enemies to save you. This part of the speech is given by the Kohen. Which Kohen? The Kohen HaMashuach. So we appoint, through anointing, a special Kohen that this is his job. His job is to speak to the people of Israel. Don't close your Kumashim. You're going to need them in a minute. But for right now, you can put them on the side. Back to the Rambam. Shene pa'amim medaber Meshuach milchama al ha'am. The Meshuach milchama speaks to the nation twice. Achat basefar, once on the border of Eretz Israel. Be'et shiyotzin, when they're leaving. Where are they leaving?
The other country.
Yeah, likely on the border of Eretz Israel, they're leaving to go attack another country, the enemy country that they're up against. That's before they start war. So this is before they enter the battlefield. Omer alehem, the Kohen HaMashuach tells them, Mi ha'ish asher nata kerem velo chilelo. Who is the man who planted a vineyard and did not yet chilelo, did not yet consecrate it, I guess is the English word they would use. What's the story with planting fruits? Right, so for the first 3 years, he's not allowed to eat from the fruits. Yeah, what is that? They're Ola, right? In year number 4, you're allowed to eat the fruits in Yerushalayim. Or you can consecrate them. I mean, you pass the Kiddusha over to coins, and that you give to Yerushalayim, and the fruits you're able to use on your own. כשישמע דבריי, יחזור מערכי המלחמה. When you hear my words, it's time for you to get up and leave the war. ואחת בערכי המלחמה. And the second time the Kohen speaks is actually once they're really about to go to war. Omer, he tells them, Al tiru ve'al tachpezu. So he speaks to the people twice. They look like they're one speech, but they're two different speeches that the Kohen HaMashuach is giving the Jewish people. Be'et shorchin ha'marachot. When they are preparing for war, what kind of things do they do to prepare the war? Now, imagine this war. Oh, sharpening swords, okay. Gathering food, what else? You're about to go to war, what do you have? Okay, tefillah, very good. You make a terrible army, Chevra. Okay, a shovel. How many tanks right now are in Gaza? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tanks? Hundreds of tanks for sure. All the jeeps? How many though? All of that machinery, someone has to do oil changes. Someone has to check the tire pressure. Somebody has to check that all the weapons are working, that all the lights are working, someone has to load them with ammunition. Someone has to do all of that stuff. Do you think it takes 5 minutes to do that? Look how long it took Israel to enter the war. Now, some of that could be a mistake on our part. But obviously some of that is, you got to call the soldiers to show up for the reserves. You have to make sure you have enough weapons in the right part of the country. But yesterday they thought they were fighting in the north. Now they're all of a sudden fighting in the south. They have to move all of that stuff. Every soldier who's now not a regular soldier, they have to come and get their weapons. Which weapons? You have to check out. You're soldier number so-and-so. You get rifle number so-and-so. You get this amount of ammunition. You get this flashlight for your rifle. You get this kind of helmet. You get that kind of... All of this stuff is what it means, she'ochin ha'marachot. We're getting all of the systems of war ready to go to war. War, they call it the war machine. It's a big machine. The operation of a war is tremendous. I didn't even talk to you about the airplanes. We didn't talk about the boats. We didn't talk about the paratroopers, about the intelligence, about the missile systems. None of that. All of that is ochin milchama. Is getting the people ready for war. V'hem kerevim hilachem. Now they're about to enter into battle. Meshuach milchama omed b'makom gavoa. The one who is anointed, the Kohen, he stands in a very high place. V'chol ha'marachot lefanav. And all of the people, all of the nations the army is in front of him. And by the way, in most armies they do this. I'll give you an example. You ever see a sports team? Right before they go out to play, what does the coach do? But that's practicing is the whole month. What do they do now? Encourage them. He gives them. I don't know what the meaning of the word pep is, but isn't that pep talk? That's what it's called. He's busy getting them ready. This is what we're doing. This is where we're going. This is why we're doing it. You better show them that. All of that is in the spirit of the Kohen HaMashuach coming to speak to the Jewish people. So he goes on a high place. Why does he go on a high place? So they could see him. They could say, by the way, what's going to be the problem that he has? Everyone can see him, but not everyone can hear him. It's a lot of people. There's no microphone system, surround sound studio. They don't have any of that. V'omer alehem b'lshon hakodesh, and he tells them in Hebrew. So he doesn't translate this to another language. Our national language is Hebrew. We go to war, we're speaking in Hebrew. Shema Yisrael, he literally tells them the Pesukim that are written here in the Torah. Atem kerevim hayom lamilchama al oivechem. You are right now about to enter a war against your enemies. Al yirach levavchem. Do not let your heart be soft. Al tiru v'al tachpezu v'al ta'artzu mipenehem. Exactly what we read before. Ki Adonai Elohechem haholech imachem. Because Adonai your God is going with you. Lihilachem lachem emovechem lehoshia atchem. He's going with you to fight against your enemies to save you. Ad kan meshuach milchama omer. Until this point, the meshuach milchama, the kohen that is anointed for war, he speaks. And what about his sound speaker, his loudspeaker system? Ve'kohen acher tachtav mashmi'a lechol ha'am b'kol ram. And he has a kohen underneath him who he announces out loud. By the way, this is very common in the olden days. You'd have, for example, the chachamim would speak, and they would have a big room, not like this small room here, a big room. And how do they get the sound to the other side? They would speak in a normal voice. Chachamim, they don't scream like hooligans. Chachamim speak, and they appoint somebody else who he has a loud voice. You know those people, they can speak in a loud room. And they announce to everybody else what the rabbi is saying. In Hebrew, they call him a meturgeman, right? That's his job. He's not necessarily a translator as much as this kohen. His job is to broadcast the words that the Kohen HaMashuach is saying over there on this high platform where everybody can see him.
Sounds like the platforms in Alexandria where they used to wave the flags.
It's similar, but think about how many people are going to war. It's a lot of people. It's not a little chevra that are coming together. Now the next part of the speech, v'achar kach, and after this, well, let's read first. Rambam writes in Sefer Mitzvot. In Mitzvah 191. The Rambam writes Mitzvah 191 of the Mitzvot of the Torah. הציווי שהצטווינו למנות כהן שינאם לפני העם את נאום המלחמה. It's the job of this Kohen to speak to the people the speech of war. Rav Kapach explains that really he could have used a different word, not so much speaking as much as giving musar, kind of like but in Hebrew, the easiest way to say that is to lecture. He's not giving a drasha here in Parashat Shavua, but this is his job. Right now, he's preaching to the people who are getting ready to go to war, for lack of a better word. And his job now is also to send back home all of the people who aren't fitting to go to battle. Whether it's because they are weak. What kind of weakness? Emotional weakness here we're talking about. They're unable to handle the heat of war. Or because he is distracted by something that causes him to not be able to connect to his job at war. And what are those things? V'hem shlosha devarim shebe'er hakatuv. Those are the three things the pasuk mentions. What are those three things? His vineyard, his wife, his house. I mean, the three things that are distracting a person from focusing on war. There are some people always distracted. There are some people that usually are concentrating. But certain things that are very important to them still distract them. That's the person, the Kohen, his job is to send them back from war. And then says the Rambam, they begin war. The Kohen ze nikra mashuach milchama. And this Kohen is called the one who is mashuach. He is anointed for war. Yomar binumo lashon nizkar b'Torah. He says all that is written in the Torah word for word. And then what does he do? V'yosif al kach devarim hame'orerim et ha'am le'milchama. And he should add in his own words things that cause the people to realize they're going to war, that will inspire them to war. U'meviim otam limsor et nafsham al nitzchon dat Hashem. And that will cause them to be willing to sacrifice their life, I mean willing to risk their life in order so that the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is brought to the world. We mentioned, remember last week or 2 weeks ago in the Moed Nevuchim? Could be that's one of the classes that's not recorded, I don't remember. The Moed Nevuchim, Rabbenu Rambam told us that the Jewish soldier doesn't go to war like all other soldiers. He goes to war also for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's part of sanctifying God's name in the world. So when he sends them to war, he says, you're not going to war to fight for some good-for-nothing reason. You're going to war in order to make a Kiddush Hashem. And it's your job to fight against those who are fighting against HaKadosh Baruch Hu's will. In particular, those people who, how do they fight against HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Is they destroy civilization. I mean, one of the major enemies of the Jewish people are terrorists. It's always been an enemy of ours. People who don't allow for the world to operate in a normal fashion. People who their whole desire is to destroy society. That's who our Torah warns us we must fight against those people. And somebody who fights against the Yishuv, against civilization, those people are enemies of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. David HaMelech says, Ohavei Adonai sinu ra. The people who love HaKadosh Baruch Hu must hate evil. Evil is the number one enemy of Am Yisrael. And what happens? We mentioned, remember, by the Tower of Babel. Remember? Book of Bereshit. There's a tower of people. They've decided to get together and fight against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He goes down to see what's going on with these people, and he mixes up their languages, and they scatter. This whole story, in general, in Bereshit, but this whole story in particular, when they teach it to the kids at school, they teach that all these people got into a tower, and they built a very high tower. And they all took their swords and their bows and arrows, they went to the top of the tower, and they're shooting it at HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and maybe he's going to fall out of the sky with an arrow on his forehead. Now, who could believe such a story? Only a Christian could believe such a story. Because he has a God that has a forehead. And clearly also a God that you can kill him. But our God, you can't kill him. Not with a bow and arrow, not with a gun, and not with a sword, not with anything. So what is the story here of they're trying to destroy the world? And let me ask you this question. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he knows how to destroy the world?
Yeah.
Yes, he knows how. He proved it already in the book of Bereshit. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to punish people who were trying to kill him, how would he do to them?
Destroy them.
He would destroy them. Does he destroy them? No, what does he do? He changes their language and scatters them.
Going together, and he liked that, but then they started going together to do bad things. And
What was the bad thing they did?
they wanted to they wanted to get rid of the break. They said, "How do we know he's not going to make another flood?"
So I agree with you up until this point. They got together to do which bad things then?
And diversity.
Against God.
What was it against God? Say the commentaries here from our Batei Midrash. They say, Ki chafetz Adonai b'yeshuvo shel olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the world to be settled. And these people were fighting HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the very fact that they all wanted to live in the same place. They all wanted to speak the same language. They all wanted to think the same way. They all wanted to live in one big tower. And that lifestyle is a lifestyle that fights against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's not what he wanted. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted us to settle the land, to spread, to make our own cultures, our own languages, our own world, our own civilizations and societies. And so what is the right consequence? If the way they're fighting HaKadosh Baruch Hu was to kill him, you should kill them. But that's not what happened. Rather, they're fighting HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the fact that they're trying to be the same. They're trying to all be a homogenous group of people hanging out in some big skyscraper in Manhattan. He says, Chevre, I want you to move to the suburbs. But they don't want to move. They need some encouragement. How does he do it? He confuses their languages, meaning he causes them to have a need to separate and settle the world. For us, this whole story in Bereshit teaches you that Chafetz Adonai b'yishuvo shel olam, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the world to be settled. He wants people to go places. He doesn't want all of us to be in the same place, doing the same things, speaking the same language. You should know, anybody who preaches conformity usually is a person who wants to destroy society. Usually. They have some fantasy that if we were all the same, we would all love each other and get together and be the same. By the way, even the Catholic Church, who spent so much of its history trying to kill people and force them to become Catholics, even once they became Catholics, they were never really Catholic. They always had the pure-blooded Catholics and the ones that were not pure-blooded, meaning even the people who said, you can be like us and be like us and be like us, all of a sudden, you're not really like us. Those people, it's a lie. The religious community does that too. Come, be Baalei Teshuvah. Come, be Gerei Tzedek. Come. We're not going to marry your kids. We won't take you to yeshivot. We won't take you to seminary. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the guise of unity. But really what they want is conformity. Why conformity? Because if I can get you to do the same thing, I can control you. I can destroy the world with you. You know, a great leader is somebody who's able to unite all kinds of people that are different without making them the same. Somebody once emailed me. They were coming to interview, they're doing some research study for university. They want to know what the dress code in the Beit Knesset was. I don't know, wear something nice, like you'd wear to work or to a business meeting or something like that. I said, no, but like which colors are you allowed to wear in your synagogue? And does it have to be a suit? And do I have to go buy a hat? Do I have to? I think to myself, I'm sure there are some communities that if you email them, what is the dress code or regulation in your synagogue? They have. Like, you should come with a coat, you should come with a hat, you should come with a shtreima, come with the stockings, come with all kinds of... I'm very happy that we have a kehillat where there is no dress code. People on YouTube are going to do something with this video, I'm telling you. But for us, it's a very nice thing. Why do we have to be the same? Imagine if I walked into the Beit Knesset. I remember one Purim, Oren and Chava dressed up like the Rabbanit and I. And as cute as it was, and as funny as it was a little bit scary for me. Well, I'll tell you why it's scary for me. Because there are some communities where everybody dresses like the rabbi. You can imagine you're the rabbi, you walk into the Beit Knesset on Shabbat, and everybody's dressing like you. Imagine how scary that is? Imagine if you walked to the Beit Knesset and everybody decided to wear the same clothes you were wearing today. They would run for the mountains. Why in the world are you dressing like me? It's a very creepy thing. But that's the reality that so many people live in. Even by something so basic like dressing. I was once sitting with some yeshiva guys, and one of them, I see, he crossed his legs, and he was wearing a black suit and a black pants and a white shirt and a black hat, black shoes, and all of a sudden I saw his socks were like SpongeBob SquarePants socks. And I said, wow, I didn't expect that. He said, that's how I show my my individuality. On his socks, misken, under his shoes. Yeah, who cares what you're wearing? Who cares? Mamash, who cares? It doesn't make... But for some people, being the same is... Well, we find the Rambam telling us that Am Yisrael goes to war to protect Yeshuvon Shel Olam. Part of Yeshuvon Shel Olam is to let the people live. Look, the Rambam writes in the Laws of Mashiach that we have no desire for world domination. You would think of people who believe they have the right faith and the one God, and we want to conquer the whole world, make everybody Jewish. No. We have no such desire. In our borders, to have safety and security and a belief in one God and the God of Israel, of course. But outside of our borders, we don't take away the right from any nation to have their own life and their own world and their own... I'm sure right now in the middle of this particular war, there are people who view what I'm saying as hypocritical. But it's not. those who know Am Yisrael, the anti-Semitic notion that the Jews run the world only makes sense to people who are anti-Semites, because Jews have no desire to run the world. We barely have a desire to run our own country. Look at how the people running it are running it. The fact is, sure, okay, all of this. So now you heard that he can also add his own words in, because his job is to pump up the people for war. Let's continue in the Rambam. Gimel, I'm in the middle of Gimel. So it's chapter 7, Halakha Gimel. So if you want a very good Rambam in Hebrew, 1 volume, they make the same set in Hebrew without commentaries. It's 1 volume. It might cost you about $90 to $100, but it's worth it. It's the whole Rambam. You could bring it to class, every class. You could flip to all the different Rambams and all the different places. It's worth it. Maybe tomorrow, next week, I'll bring you to show you what it looks like. Says, you have 4 volumes. I'm talking about the 1 volume set. Yep. ואחר כך אומר, משוח מלחמה. And then the anointed one, he gets up and he says, מי האיש אשר בנה בית חדש ולא חנכו ילך וישוב לביתו. Who is the person who built a house and he didn't yet live inside of this house? Again, why are we worried about him? Are we worried about his house? What are we worried about? About him. Right, the Torah says, what are we worried about, Hanan? Maybe he's going to die in war and somebody else will. It's not that we're worried about someone else living in his house. It's that he's worried about someone else living in his house. And if he's thinking about his house the whole time he's at war, you ever talk to somebody and you realize like their head is somewhere else? That's the problem. You cannot be at war and your head is somewhere else. That's not... Exactly, very good. ומי האיש אשר נטע כרם ולא הכין לו ילך וישוב לביתו פן ימות במלחמה ואיש אחר יכננו. The same thing about the one with the vineyard. We don't want him to die at war, meaning he's afraid he's going to die at war and somebody else will get his field. ומי האיש אשר הרס אישה ולא לקחה ילך וישוב לביתו פן ימות במלחמה ואיש אחר ייקחנה. And the same thing with the man who's מאורס. We mentioned that in the Jewish weddings there are 2 parts. He's married to her, but has not yet consummated his marriage with her. And we're afraid that the whole time he's thinking, if I die now, then someone else is going to take her. I don't want her to live with somebody else. I want her to live with me. And because of that, this is something that we can't have among our soldiers. Ad kan meshuach milchama medaber. Until this point, the meshuach milchama speaks. V'ashoter mashmi'a lechol ha'am b'kol ram. And the shoter, this is now the officer, he is announcing all of this out loud to everybody else. And then, look in the ending of this halakha. ואחר כך מדבר השוטר מעצמו. And then the shoter, the officer, speaks on his own. Now, it's not the משוח מלחמה. ואומר, and he says, מי האיש הירא ורך הלבב? Who is the person who is afraid and has a weak heart? ושוטר אחר משמיע לכל העם. And another officer, he's the one who announces it to the whole people. So at this point in time, they finish the speech, and what happens among the ranks? People start leaving. Why? They're afraid. They're excusing themselves from military service, and they're going home. So we have to wait now until everybody leaves. Why do you have to wait until everybody leaves? You can't go to battle until you know how many soldiers you have. Did my tank just lose a driver? If we just lost a driver, then 2 of us who ride the tank are going to have to join a different tank. We have to figure out who. Also, when we go to war, how do we march into war? There are rows, there are lines. You can't have gaps inside of them. We call it this in Hebrew, kishrei milchama. Kishrei milchama literally means the tying of war. But it means when the soldiers march out. You see how the military airplanes fly? They fly in precision, in order. The tanks, in order. The soldiers, in order. You see the horses, in order. Everyone's in order. You can't have gaps and holes missing. So we have to wait until everyone leaves. Once everybody leaves, and once all of the people who go back, meaning they go back home, we close all of our ranks. Yes? And then we put at the heads of the nation the leaders of the army, the different generals and officers, the people who lead the soldiers into battle. But famously, this is a major difference between the war of the Israelites and other nations. Other nations, the commanding officer, Elchanan, what does he yell before the war?
Charge.
Charge! Run ahead, guys. Our soldiers,
Go in
Machorei.
front. Take them-
Acharai! Macharai, right? Come behind me. They march first, soldiers back. It's like when Onkelos tells Titus about the mezuzah, right? Now, we already discussed in the past the halach, if this is really true, but what does he tell him? He tells the soldiers,
Hashem.
my uncle, Titus, when you go to war, he stands in front of you or behind you? Of course he stands behind us. We protect him. He said, look, my God, I sit inside and he stands outside protecting me. Yeah, this idea that the leaders lead the people into battle. In general, you should know, you can't expect someone to do something for you that you're not willing to do yourself. It's the worst job that a person has, to do things that nobody else wants to do. If you're not willing to do it, don't delegate it to somebody else. That's already abusive. It's not delegation. If it's something you would do, then it's something you could ask somebody else to do for you also. So he continues. And what about in the back? This is a special halakha, this one. U'ma'amidin ma'achorei kol ma'aracha, and behind every, battalion, every unit, they put shotrim chazakim va'azim. They put very strong and very brazen officers. You know what kind of people? You look at them and you get scared of them. This cheva over here. And what is happening? V'chashilin shel barzel bidehem. And they're holding kashil. What's a kashil? They're tools. Which kind of tools? If you look in Bava Kama, I have here Mishnah. If you look in Bava Kama, chapter 10, Mishnah 10, Rabbenu HaRambam says, what is a kashil? Al-kadom, or al-kadum in Arabic. And Rav Kapach translates, what does the word mean? Hukli, it's a tool, shehanagar morid bo min ha'etz chatichot gedolot. It's a tool that the carpenter uses to bang off pieces of wood, big pieces of wood.
To carve them.
Uvanitpas, and in the printed Rambam, so not in Rav Kapach's Rambam, he always calls the other one the printed one. It says, "Hu kli hanagar shemitaken bo ha'etz." It's a tool that the carpenter uses to fix the tree, the wood, not to cut the wood. In my understanding, it's not so much a axe as it is some kind of big sledgehammer. I think officially, if you open up a dictionary in Israel, a kashil is a sledgehammer. I'm 99% sure. If you look, that's what it says. I don't know. I'm not a carpenter. I'm not an expert in wood. But it's something used to break wood. Meaning, you don't want to get hit by it. It's not something nice. And they stand where? Behind. Naftali, why do they stand behind the soldiers? What are they going to do with hammers? Why would they hit the soldiers? To prevent them from running away. Let's read together. וכל המבקש לחזור מן המלחמה, and anybody who tries to run away from war, הרשות בידם לחתוך את שוקיו. They have, in that way, it seems like it could be an axe. They have permission to slice their thighs, to hit their legs. What do you mean you're leaving war? Who lets you leave war? We're here to make sure you don't run away. By the way, in any army you have military police. What's the job of the military police? To enforce the soldiers. Who's going to check on them? And about deserters, about people who steal from the army, about people who are not wearing the uniform correctly. All kinds of things. There are people, that's their job. Shetchilat nefila, listen very carefully here. Shetchilat nefila, because the beginning of losing war, nisa, is running away. Retreating means losing. If there is no way that you win a war by giving away territory. Only Israelis know how to do this. Yes? Only Israel knows how to win wars by giving back land. They're not winners. We know they're not winners. The Arabs know they're not winners. But everybody else, the Israelis in the history books, we won this war, we won that war, we won the next war. Which litmus test do you use to determine that you won a war? I'll tell you how I know we won the war of 1948. We have a state of Israel. I know that we won the war of 1967 because we have most of Yerushalayim. Yes? I know that we lost many other things because we won wars, we kept land, and we gave it away. We gave away the Sinai. Every other weekend we think away of giving the Golan. We gave away Azat. All of this war, listen carefully to me, is because of those people who gave this land away. Everything that happens here. What makes you think that you can run away and your enemy is going to think you're strong? Enemy only understands that you're not afraid. I'm going to run away. You want to fight? And then you run away. I ran away because I'm too tough and I don't want to hurt you. Come on. I'm not telling you that's how we should live our life all day long, macho, fighting each other. But when you go to war, we already let everybody who's scared go home. You had a chance to leave already. Now you march into war. You're leaving. It's not just about you anymore. Your leaving means that other soldiers are going to leave too. You're going to scare people. Hey, that tough guy next to me is running away. I'm going to run away too. And if we start running away and our enemy sees people running away, then what do they know? We're going to win this war. What? The army's weak. And the last thing that we can do is to broadcast that our army is weak. Now, these are like lessons, chevra, that are... You don't need them from the Rambam, by the way. Any primitive nation 5 million years ago, don't get stuck on me, 5,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, any nation of cavemen who couldn't speak, they knew that when you go to war, you got to be strong. It's something known. The Rambam doesn't have to tell you this. What we have is a halakha that allows for those officers to physically hurt our soldiers, because this is a situation of pikuach nefesh. This is saving a person's life. This is saving the life of the Jewish people. Your retreating hurts all of us. When people are sitting shiva for their children who are killed in battle because we show weakness, that might not be a shiva of a person who died, but of a person who was killed. Killed by who? By the weakness of Jewish leadership. That's something that most people don't want to think about. Most people want to say, oh, he died, Hashem wanted him. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants people, he knows how to find them. Doesn't make wars to find them. Remember what I read to you once?
About the general.
That most of the time spiritual philosophies are created to cover up for the ineptitude of leadership. Our leaders, they're so great, they're so wonderful, it can't be that you can criticize them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everything he wants happens. Yeah, everything he wants happens. You can also mess up his plans. The world is full of people who mess up HaKadosh Baruch Hu's world. Is that what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants? No, he wants us to fix the world. And so part of this is about going to war. Yeah.
On Shabbat, you said a story, not like that Shabbat, a few Shabbats ago, about how you can make Hashem's will, you're able to take it away.
That's right.
You said a story about like the general, so
very good. Al-Khanan's correct. I said it in a shiur. I didn't say it on camera yet, but this man, yes, Sinwar, who he seems to be, listen, I have to explain something, maybe I can explain. You find him, you don't find him, you kill him, you don't kill him. There are thousands of more cockroaches under the earth that will replace it. It's not like you defeated the president of a country. It's a replaceable pawn. It's not a big deal that you find him, you don't find him. He has pneumonia, doesn't have pneumonia. All of this stuff is child's play. But let's predict. He was fundamental in the execution of this whole October 7th massacre. So what's his story? He spoke Hebrew. He speaks Hebrew very well. By the way, the hostages that were there spoke to him. He went to visit some of them. Where does he know Hebrew from? You know that the Arabs in Gaza don't know Hebrew. Most of them, they're not like the Arabs who live in Israel proper, who speak Hebrew, work with. These are people that you go there, entire neighborhoods of people don't know Hebrew. How do they know Hebrew? The people that were in our prisons. Sinwar was in our prison. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at a certain point, decided, and you know that I don't usually talk like this, but I think this is something it's not in the supernatural, this is in the very natural. He had a terrible illness in his brain, some rare brain condition, while he was in our custody. Why was he in our custody? Because he was a terrorist. Meaning he wasn't in our custody because he was floating around selling ice cream in the sun without a permit. And he was there because he was a terrorist. And so what do we do with terrorists? In Israel we have something, we don't kill murderers. It's something unbelievable. The fact that we don't have a death penalty for murderers in Israel is a crime against humanity. What happened?
We give them a college education.
Very good. So, but we did more than college education. We saved his life. We sent him to the best Israeli hospitals. By the way, Israelis are waiting in line trying to get appointments in social medicine. But he's a terrorist. We got to take care of him first. By the way, in Israel, not so long ago, there was I never know if they passed the law or they didn't pass the law, but they were debating whether if a terrorist attack would happen and the Magen David Adom, the ambulance would show up, if they have to take care of the terrorist before they take care of the civilian.
What? No.
And I believe that they passed such a law. I'm not sure if it's true, but I remember them discussing it. I'm thinking to myself, what kind of what kind of crazy mind do you have to have that says we need to do what's right and take care of the terrorists first?
What?
Why? Why would you think like that?
Need to take care of those who are more games.
Very good. Okay. It's going to go in a story, of course. So now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to kill this person with a rare brain illness. What do? The best of the Jewish people's doctors get together. How can we save his life? We save his life. His Israeli intelligence agent comes to interrogate him and says, no, now that we saved your life, or you think maybe you'll change a little bit of your attitude towards the Jewish people? He says, you are an illegal Zionist occupation. Of course you have to take care of me. He said, of course I'm not going to stop fighting you. And this same man goes back into Gaza and does all of this. So ask me the question, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did this? Or we did this? At which point do we take responsibility for the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tried to help us get rid of a terrorist? And we didn't let him. And so at a certain point in time, Am Yisrael needs to learn that most of the Torah is written to teach human beings to take responsibility for their own actions. You can blame HaKadosh Baruch Hu only for things that have no other rational explanation. Everything else is our fault. It's the reason why you can't expect that you can destroy the world and the world will continue. You can, I told, every day, every year, there are species of animals, of insects, they're gone, they're extinct, chevre. Human beings think, the Mashiach will come. Chevre, the dodo bird isn't coming back from extinction because the Mashiach comes. Human beings can destroy the world. That's also why we believe that human beings can fix the world. We have a tremendous amount of power, but we can't blame HaKadosh Baruch Hu for everything. You can blame HaKadosh Baruch Hu only for the things we don't understand. Things we do understand, that's our fault. Let me just finish this section for tonight.
It's the same with the
That's exactly what I was talking about. There's that.
clean up the atmosphere.
So we've adopted some kind of Christian mentality that we can't destroy the world. God runs the world. That's not true. It's not true. I read to you Midrash the other night. When did I read it to you?
Shabbat.
HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells the Jewish people, be careful that you don't destroy my world, because you can. You can. I don't remember when I read this Midrash to you. No. It was here recently, connected to Tu B'Shvat. 2 weeks ago? Yeah? Thank you. Someone remembers.
Yeah.
Yes. Right? Now, we continue. במה דברים אמורים שמחזירים אנשים אלו מערכי המלחמה? In which situation do we talk about this, that we send people back home because they have a house, or they have a field, or a vineyard, or a wife? במלחמת הרשות. This is only in wars that are optional wars. אבל במלחמת מצווה, but in the war of a mitzvah, הכל יוצאים. Everybody goes to war. אפילו חתן מחדרו וכלה מחופתה. Even the groom from his room and the bride from her chuppah. This opens up a whole can of worms. Let me just very quickly, do you know the obvious question here? Not about women. Tell me the obvious question. How could it only apply to the war of Reshut? Do you remember the first sentence of the Rambam today? What did he write? What did the Rambam, first thing he said? So this applies, all of this applies to both kinds of wars. To Melchemet Mitzvah and Melchemet Reshut. And here he says that only applies to Melchemet HaReshut. But Melchemet Mitzvah, you have to go to war. One possible answer, I'm not going to say there's not many more. One possible answer is that the speech of the Kohen, don't be scared, that applies to all the wars. But the option to leave the war, that only applies when the war is an optional war. When the war is a mandatory war for Jewish survival, everybody is recruited. Even the Chatan Mechedro v'Chala Mechupata. Now, if you let me, I wish to just spend a few more minutes on this tangent here about women going to war. Just a few minutes, and then we'll call it a night together. B'ezrat Hashem. This whole expression, when the Rambam uses a pasuk, he intends for us to look over there. What is he saying in this pasuk? This statement of Chatan Mechedro v'Chala Mechupata It actually comes from the book of Yoel. So if you want to open up a book of Yoel, chapter 2, so open on Sefaria Tanakh. I have a few Tanakhs. I have one right here. I have another one right here if you want. This whole chapter of Yoel, chapter 2, is warning the Jewish people about bad things that are about to happen to them. And some of the things that they can do in order to save themselves.
Give it just a little quick history.
Of Yoel. What's that? You're putting me on the spot over here. Yoel is one of the what? Who's talking about Yoel? We actually read from here.
In the time of the Talmud, it says.
Yoel is a short book that's talking about Teshuvah of the Jewish people. So much so that Ashkenazim read from here a haftarah. Part of it, the haftarah for Shabbat Shuvah. And like many of these smaller Nevi'im, it's not so full of stories of things that happened in their lifetime or things like that. Mostly are words of musar, rebuke for the Jewish people to do Teshuvah. And here,
In the era of the second that's
yeah. So here in chapter 2, if you look in Pasuk Ted Zayin, Ted Vav.
It's not Yudah and not Yisrael, we're not there anymore.
תקעו שופר בציון, קידשו צום, קראו עצרה. The Navi is telling you, now is time to gather the Jewish people. Blow the shofar in Zion. We remember learning the laws of fasting, that part of the ways that we fast is the blowing of the shofar. We call the people together to do teshuvah, fast, make an assembly. Isfu am, kadeshu kahal, kivetzu zekenim. Gather the people together, the whole nation, the elders. Isfu olelim v'yonekeh shadayim. Gather the little children and the white babies who are still nursing. Yetzeh chatan michedro v'chala mechupata. The chatan should come out of his room, and the bride should come out of her chuppah. Radak's commentary, by the way, is perhaps the most precious commentary everywhere. Everywhere that you have it. He says the following.
Rabbi David came late.
Yes. He claims even here that we want the children to fast. Why? We hear the children crying. What's it going to do to the adults? The elders will hear the babies crying, the children crying, and they will do teshuvah. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will have compassion because he hears the children cry. What does it mean? Even the groom, that he's supposed to be happy now with his wife. But what's happy? There's a halakha category. After a man gets married, he's supposed to be happy with his wife. What is the definition of that?
He doesn't work.
Right, meaning he's with her. He stays with her. Most people that are in good relationships, they're happy when they're together. Some people, they're happy when they're not together. Usually when they're happy not being together, it's when you should be worried. Yes? I once sat at a Shabbat table, and there's a guy who said he travels for business. He said his favorite Shabbatot are the ones that he gets stuck in a place, on a business trip, and he misses his flight, and he doesn't have to be with his wife for Shabbat. When did he say it? In front of his wife. In front of his wife. There are people like that. וכן ככלה תצא מבית חופתה. והוא החדר של זכר. She should leave her room. That's the place that we mentioned. או פירוש מחופתה, מהחלאים והעדיים שחופים עליה בימי החתונה, וכולם יהיו באסיפה אחת. ויבכו החתן והכלה מהם תחת שמחתם. וכל אלה הדברים שוברים ליבו של אדם, והן ירחם. That all of this, leaving that place of the khatan and the kala, all of that breaks the heart of people. Look, these are people supposed to be happy. And instead of being happy, I had a friend who during his Sheva Barachot, his father passed away. It was, remember, during SARS 2, what was it called? The one when I was like, yeah, he got married, so his father had to miss his wedding already, was in the ER. And then I remember during Sheva Barachot, he transitioned to Shiva. It was a heartbreaking thing. You see a person who should be celebrating, and instead of celebrating, they're mourning. And that is a jarring experience. When the Khatan and Kala leave their wedding for something, what does it tell all of the guests? It's not a normal situation right now. We're at war. We can't celebrate now. We can't party. That action is supposed to cause the people to do teshuvah. Yes? Now, that being said, there are many people who try to use this Rambam as saying that women should go to war. And this especially relates to Israel because there always has been tension surrounding the drafting of women to war. You already have do we draft the yeshiva students or not, and then do we draft the women or not? And so this was, especially in the early years of the state of Israel, a big area of commotion. And there were those who tried to use this teaching of the Rambam to say that, see, the Rambam believed that in a Milchemet Mitzvah, women go to war.
Well, the pasuk is not actually directed to war. It's
Right, but the Rambam uses this pasuk, yes, when he talks about who goes to war.
He's talking about gathering them for Kehillat.
Correct. Now, if you look here, in Masechet Kiddushin, page 2, I collected here some things. The Talmud says, Darko shel ish la'asot milchama, Ven darka shel isha la'asot milchama. It's the way of a man to go to war, not the way of a woman to go to war. Masechet Yevamot, page 65. Our rabbis also tell us we're supposed to fill the world and conquer it. And it says, over there, Masechet Yevamot, Ish darko lichbosh, ven isha darka lichbosh. A man, he usually is the one who conquers, and a woman is not the one who conquers. Masechet Nazir, page 59. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Minayin shlo tetzei isha bichlei zayin lemilchama. How do we know that a woman does not put on weapons and go to war? Talmud Omar, lo yekli gever al isha, v'lo yibash gever simat isha. Shlo yiteken ish b'tikunei isha. We see here that a man cannot wear a woman's clothing and a woman does not wear a man's clothing, meaning that she doesn't go to war. Putting on that armor and putting on the weapons is the way that a man goes to war, and a woman does not do it. Want to see an interesting pasuk? Rabbanit, while we're looking for the pasuk in the book of Shoftim, chapter 5, please tell us the story of Yael.
It doesn't say what you were eating.
Yeah. Rachel, you tell us about Yael.
Oh, yeah. Yael is the one who ends up killing Sisra. Vorah and Barak are leading them into the army. Sisra runs away. She sees Yael's tent. She assumes it's a friendly ally of his. He comes into her tent. She feeds him. And after he's nicely well fed, she takes the peg of his tent and drives it straight through his forehead. And that's how she ultimately kills him.
Very good. And so here,
It's a milk products first. Go to sleep.
Yeah. Meat, milk, wines.
my Tanakh. If you open up the book of Shoftim, chapter 5, so you can go to Sefaria. You know, if you come with a Tanakh and a Rambam, have one in your library, your life will always be good.
It doesn't say you willing people who spend time for more scholars going to go to war.
We're going to talk about that soon enough. It's going to be one of the topics we bring up here. Yeah?
So that's an issue yet again.
Who's singing here in chapter 5? This is the famous song of Deborah. How does Deborah sing?
With her mouth.
With her mouth. But woman can't sing? So, another class for another time. Okay, but here, Devorah is doing the unthinkable. She's singing. And one of the songs that she's singing, she's praising all kinds of things. So here, look what she says. In Pasuk 24. Tivorach minashim Yael. Praiseworthy is Yael from all the women. Eshet Chever HaKeni, the wife of Chever the Keni. Minashim ba'ohel tivorach. She should be blessed from all the women of the tent. By the way, in the Sephardic tradition, this is very, very often what we write about our wife. We write our wife's name, and then we write Mem, Bet, Taf. Minashim ba'ohel tivorach. Maim shal, he asked her for water. Chalav natana, she gave him milk. Besefel adirim hikriv machema, she gives him butter. She makes him get very drowsy from the food that she gives him. Yada leyated tishlachna, she reaches her hand for the yated. What is the yated?
Like the peg.
The peg of the tent, right? Vimina lehalmut amelim vehalma sisra machaka rosho machatza vechalfa rakato. She kills him. I will spare you the gory details. Ben ragaleha kara nafal shachav. He, between her legs, he bowed, fell, lay. Which one did he do?
Oh, he went like this.
He fell, flat, lay. Meaning,
Like this.
alav shalom, right? They was dead. If you look here, in the translation of Aramaic of the Torah, in Pasuk 26, if you click on that Pasuk in Sefaria 26 and you ask for the commentary, Targum Yonatan, he writes the following: Tovta Yael itat chever, shalma'a de kaimat ma dichtiv besefer oraita. The kaimat. How great is Yael, the wife of Chever, who fulfilled that which was written b'sfar oraita. What is the sfar oraita? The book of the Torah, the Moshe. The book of Torah of Moshe. She fulfilled that which it says. La yeheve tikun zen digvar al iteta. That the utensils of war of a man should not be on a woman. Vela yitaken gevar b'tikune iteta. And a man should not wear the clothing of a woman. Here you see that
Isn't this copied in the Hanukkah thing?
here you see that here you see that one.
Oh, that,
No, I don't know what he's talking about. What I'm talking about. Here you see why is Yael praised from all the women of the tent?
Because she's using something.
Because Sisera doesn't have a sword. She can't take his gun. He doesn't have a gun. She can't take his weapon and kill him. No, she intentionally took the peg so as not to carry a weapon, because women don't go to war. And this leads to later conversations in halakha. Can women carry guns? Cheva, you should know. I don't want anyone. I'm going to skip all the thousands of years of conversations. There are certain places where it's a life-saving situation for a woman to carry a gun. There are entire yeshuvim, places where people, and it's not even a question. Yes? In our Kehillat, when I asked Rabbi this question, he said, of course, just people shouldn't be like strapping it on their forehead and walking around the Beit HaKnesset. It's the kind of thing you just keep quiet. But also in the ladies section, it's important that there should be people that know how to protect the Kehillat. This concept of going to war, not going to war, leads the Radbaz to ask the question, so then what is the Rambam? Why is the Rambam so careful about his language? Why is he not careful here? Why does he not mention that women don't actively go to war? But it's not true. All throughout halakha, it's very clear that women don't go to war. Women don't go to war. So here should be the exception. So we mentioned the answer, but I want to read to you the answer. The Radbaz writes the following. I don't have a copy of the Radbaz at home, so I printed it on a paper. The Radbaz says, Baraita kilshon Rabbenu. The Baraita, the language is exactly like the Rambam. Ela dekashe, but it's a question. V'chi derech hanashim la'asot milchama. Is it the way of women to go to war? Tiketane v'chala mechupata v'haktiv kol kvuda bat melech penima. That a woman goes to war. We know David HaMelech tells us that the honor of a woman is not to go out like that. V'yesh lomar, So what can you say? The Hachi Kamar, he says it this way, Kevan de Chatan yotze mechedro, the Chatan leaves his room, Kala yotzet mechupata, shena noheget im mechupa, meaning she doesn't spend time in the chuppah, rather what does she do? Ve'efshad b'mechemet mitzvah. It's possible in the war of a mitzvah, Hanashim hayu mesapkot mayim u'mazon lebaalehen, that the woman would bring the food and water to their husbands, v'chen haminhag hayom ba'araviyot, and that is the custom today among the Arab women. Meaning their husband goes to war, and he keeps coming back to the base where his wife is waiting for him. But you know, like this, in Arab countries, Harav Kapach's father was in prison. Why?
Opposing rabbi.
Then just happened by the Hasidim. Okay? And when they were in prison in Yemen, you had to pay money to be in prison. So they would charge you rent for your prison cell. And they wouldn't give you food or water. Your family had to come bring you food and water. Remember Rabbi Akiva in prison with the Romans? He doesn't have enough water to wash his hands, and he doesn't figure out what he should do. Should he drink? Should he wash his hands? The same thing was, I'm telling you now, it's not even in Yemen, your family had to pay your rent, and they had to come up with money to bring you food and water. And if you didn't have food and water, you just died in jail. It's not their job, then they would die. Or they would take more family to jail. It's a crazy word. It sounds like yesterday, but not so much different. Taxpayers pay a lot of money for jail too. You pay every day for people to be in prison. And just for the record, it's not so different. Just the system works a little more distant. You don't feel it as much as you feel it here. And to summarize all of this, Chacham Ovadia Yosef has a famous teshuvah in Yabi Alma, which I'm not going to get to today, but if you wanted to get to there, Chacham Ovadia Yosef discusses the halachic ramification of this as it relates to the mitzvah of reading Parashat Zachor et asher asa lecha Amalek. To remember what Amalek did to you. Why would you have to remember that? Are women obligated to hear the reading of Amalek? No.
No.
Women are not obligated to hear the reading of Amalek because they're not obligated to go to war, so they don't have to wipe out Amalek. Who has to hear Amalek? The men have to hear Amalek. Can a woman hear the reading of Amalek? Of course, nobody's telling you not. Does she have to feel bad that she couldn't get away to get to the Beit HaKnesset because her child was sick? No, she doesn't feel bad at all. To the contrary, today they make special minyanim, one after the next, for women to come to Beit HaKnesset. Hear Amalek. It's a harmful thing. Harmful in the way that it guilts certain women that if they didn't do a mitzvah properly. And it's not fair. It's really not acceptable that women are guilted bad enough that the whole world on their shoulders. Also, you want to make them do mitzvot they don't have to do. And for those of you who know that I'm as egalitarian as I can get in the Rambam, you have no reason to be at home. So come to Beit HaKnesset. You should be, because anyways, Musaf is important, Shachit is important, Pesukah is important. But Amalek, it's not the reason why someone has to scramble to the Beit HaKnesset who doesn't have an obligation to do so. Chacham Ovadia discusses all the different things you could possibly discuss about, are women obligated in war, which kind of war, all those conversations. As Kedako B'Kodesh, he writes a lot. Rav Kapach has a little note here. Right? If I can find it to you, I will read it, and with that, I will end the shiur. If Rav Kapach writes the following, it says here, "En lilmod mikan," you should not learn from this idea. Shanashim nilchamot b'milchemet mitzvah, that women go to war in a war of a mitzvah. By the way, in general, what is this connected to? It's a Mishnan Kiddushin. Mishnan Kiddushin mentions the woman. I'll put it for you. Mishnah says the following: Chol mitzvah taseh she'azman gerama, ha'anashim chayavim, v'anashim peturot. Any mitzvah which is a time-bound mitzvah, the men are obligated and the women are not. V'chol mitzvah taseh she'lo hazman gerama, echad anashim v'echad nashim chayavim. And anyone that's not time-bound, men and women are obligated to them equally. The Rambam tells us a very impressive sentence here. But what is an example of mitzvah shazman gerama? The Rambam mentions, Hi shechovat asiyata bizman mesuyam. So you can only do it at a certain time. Yes? V'shelo be'oto hazman en chiyuv chal. And if it's not in that particular time, it has no obligation. Kigon, hasukah, v'halulav, v'hashofar, v'hatefillin, v'hatzitzit. All of those things, women are not obligated in them. Does a woman have to eat in the sukkah? No. Does she have to take a leavened toll? No. Does she have to hear the shofar? No. Again, why you're guilting women to stay? Sunday woman comes to Beit HaKnesset. She's there 4 hours on Rosh Hashanah before the shofar is blown. At a certain point in time, it's pressured. All the people that come home from the Beit HaKnesset, the babysitter needs to run away, whatever the situation might be. Why guilt her? She has to hear the shofar. She's not able to today hear the shofar. But you make some old lady walk from her house to 1.5 miles on Rosh Hashanah. She can't. She can bear with a stick. She walks to Beit HaKnesset to hear the shofar. It's a great mitzvah. But why make her feel so inadequate because she didn't hear the shofar? She's exempt from the mitzvah. ומצוות עשה שלו הזמן גרמה, הן המצוות שחובתן חלה בכל הזמנים, כגון המזוזה. Mezuzah, what time do you have to have a mezuzah on your door? Always. Ma'akeh, what is ma'akeh? The fence on your roof, always. Hatzedakah. When are you exempt from giving tzedakah? Never. And therefore, those mitzvot are obligated on everyone. And says the Rambam, Uchvar yadata, you should already know, sheklal hu etzlenu, that we have one rule by us. In my Beit HaMidrash, says the Rambam. What's the rule of the Beit HaMidrash? En lemedin min haklalot. We don't learn from the general rules. Meaning, there's no such thing as a general rule. When you say most of the time is most of the time, but it's not all of the time. ואמרו כל הרוצה לומר על הרוב, אבל מצוות עשה שאנשים חייבות, ומה שהן חייבות בכל היקפן, אין להם אלה כלל, אלה נמסרים על פה. There are some mitzvot that are time bound, that women are obligated in them. והם דברים מקובלים, everyone accepts that. הלא ידעת, don't you know, שאכילת מצה על ליל פסח. Women have to eat matzah on Pesach? Yes. Yes, but it's a time bound mitzvah, doesn't matter. V'simcha b'moadim, to be happy in the festivals. Women have to be v'samachna b'chagecha? Yes. V'hakel? Yes. V'tefillah?
Yes.
Are women obligated to pray?
Yes.
Yes. Umikra, I know women think they don't have to pray, but women have to pray. They're human beings also. Mikra Megillah. In our Kehillat, I noticed that the men are praying. Baruch Hashem, I noticed that lately, I don't know what happened, there seems to be some plague that has happened, that people started talking in the Beit HaKnesset. It didn't used to be that way in Kehillat Shaar HaShamayim. And I'm just asking for people to take it to heart. It didn't used to be our minhag. It used to be our minhag that even in the ladies section, everybody prayed. Everybody, and I have something a hard time, that there are ladies that are trying to pray, I notice, and they can't. Baruch Hashem, our Beit HaKnesset is so small that to go from your chair to the door outside is very quick. Some Beit HaKnesset, like I was in Mexico, you have to walk a mile till you leave the Beit HaKnesset. So you're lazy to go outside and talk. But here you can go outside and come back, and even from the hallway you can hear the Torah being read still. You don't have to go anywhere. It would be a great thing, really a great thing, not to shush anybody, not to get upset at anybody, but just to help create an environment even on the other side where people can pray. I said my Musar very gently. Aval, he says, what else? Mikra Megillah. Women have to hear the Megillah? Yes, at night and during the day. V'ner Chanukah. Women have to light Chanukah candles? Absolutely. V'ner Shabbat. What about lighting Shabbat candles? Yes, interesting thing if there is a blessing on Shabbat candles. A different story. V'Kiddush Hayom. Saying Kiddush. Women are obligated? Yes. That means they're also obligated in Havdalah. Someone once asked me, what does a woman do if there's no man at home and she has to do Havdalah? But she can't drink or else she's going to grow a mustache. You heard that? Shtuyot. I don't know. Women have this superstition. They're not allowed to drink from the cup of the Havdalah. So here she's trying to do this mental gymnastics of how do I do? You think HaChamim would obligate you in a mitzvah you can't do? It's a Baba Maisa. Don't think. It's not true. It's not true. Of course they tell you. I don't know why. Now, more than that, People think I have to light Shabbat candles, but I have to say the bracha backwards. I have to first do the mitzvah, then say the bracha, because when I say the bracha, Shabbat starts. You think Chachamim were so stupid that they made a mitzvah that you can't do properly? That they didn't know the Chachamim when you're going to say the bracha, Shabbat starts? It's an unbelievable thing. Says the Rambam, Kol elu mitzvot aseh shazman gerama, v'chol achat mehen chiyuva l'nashim k'chiyuva l'anashim. What else? All of them, women are obligated in these mitzvot. They're time-bound. Kagam mitzvat pirya uvia, v'talmud Torah, ufidyon haben, umilchemet Amalek. The mitzvah of having children, it's a time-bound mitzvah? No, women are not obligated in the war of fighting Amalek, even though it's not a time-bound mitzvah. Talmud Torah, the strict understanding of sitting down and learning Torah, seems to be that women are exempt from that. Sure, women do learn Torah, I'm not telling you not. Pidyon haben. The Pidyon haben is a mitzvah on who? On the father, not on the mother. Umilchemet Amalek, the war with Amalek. It's not a time-bound mitzvah. Why should a woman be exempt? כל אחת מהן מצוות עשה שלא הזמן גרמה, ואין הנשים חייבות בהן, אלא כולן קבלה כמו שביארנו. This rule that women are exempt or obligated in time-bound mitzvot is just a general rule. But there are exceptions to this rule. And how do we know? From the Kabbalah of our Chachamim. And so to summarize everything that we studied today. The Kohanim, the Kohen HaMashuach, stands before the people and he encourages them to go to war. And he sends back certain people from war who are not good enough to go to war, or they have a reason, they're too distracted to go to war. And then once he's done with that, everybody who wants to run away, we keep them at war because we can't show the enemy our weakness. And when a mitzvah, in a war of a mitzvah, everyone goes to war. The men go to war, even from their wedding, and the women go to war. What kind of war? Perhaps you can read this to go help there's all kinds of jobs the army needs. Food, drinks, clothing, uniforms. You remember in this country, I don't remember what war, but you're going to help me out. I think it was World War One.
Yeah.
Yeah? Where all the men were in Europe and in battle, and this country was falling apart. The economy was falling apart. So women all joined the workplace, the workforce, everything in it. And then all of a sudden the men came back from war and go back to the kitchen. It was a very jarring moment in this country's history. And that's not how the Chachamim see this war. But there are different jobs in the war. Not every soldier, by the way, not every man who goes to war signs up to go hold a gun in battle. Today I watched a short documentary of autistic soldiers in the Israeli military that are specially drafted for intelligence. Because at the end of the day, in English we're going to call it a neurodivergent mind. A neurodivergent mind, I don't know if that's the correct word, I'm not using it in a negative way. Someone who's neurodivergent, let me translate it better, it just means they think differently. You always need not just a fresh set of eyes, but eyes who can see things differently than other people see them. This war that we're in right now has a special unit of soldiers who are on the autistic spectrum, who are analyzing intelligence. They're the ones who found certain hostages near the hospital, because they were able to see.
Who are actually watching the border because they have a very good eye at focusing in on it.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, if I would give this person a machine gun, go to war, that would be the misuse of this person's talents. And so everybody understands that in a military, you need many types of people. All of them are part of the war effort. And this is, again, we say, that maybe we mean this also, that women joined the war effort. Not necessarily the war. In halakha, men go to war, the women don't. It could be this and it could be that. I wanted to touch on those details today. Really, it seems to be there's the halachic problem of wearing the weapons. It's wearing the shilyon. In fact, you see explicitly in the rabbinic literature that it's the putting on of the armor that is forbidden. But again, all of those things could possibly...
Like you said.
Right, all of those things could possibly be waived in certain situations. But for right now, I didn't intend to give an exhaustive analysis of do women go to war, rather to help us understand the Rambam here. B'ezrat Hashem, I think we have 2 or 3 shiurim of the Rambam's laws of war left, and then God willing, we will go back to our regular Rambam Shulchan Aruch study. But for right now, Chavra, I wish you a good night. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to stick around and ask them.